Okay, so we're really excited to hear from our two presenters today. We have Umi Yogalingam from Parachute and Kiana Gigliotti, a member of the Canadian Youth Road Safety Council. So first off, a little bit about Umi. Umi is a public health professional and manager of knowledge translation and programs at Parachute, Canada's national injury prevention organization. Umi manages injury prevention programming and initiatives in youth road safety. Umi is also the project lead of the For Young Drivers by Young Drivers initiative at Parachute. Umi has worked in nonprofit and public health sector for over a decade. She brings several years of experience in community engagement, qualitative research, knowledge mobilization, and youth health. Umi is passionate about equity in injury prevention, meaningful youth and community engagement, and using creative and innovative strategies to improve road safety for Canadians. Umi holds a Master of Public Health degree and an honors bachelor's degree in mental health studies from the University of Toronto. And Kiana Gigliotti is originally from Red Deer and is a third-year student at the University of Calgary pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Physiology. Her passions include playing sports, working out, and being involved in the car scene. She's currently working with Robert Colonna as a youth collaborator with the iMobile Driving Research Lab at Western University. In the future, Kiana hopes to pursue a career working with children in the medical field. Fun facts about Kiana are that she has had 3 knee surgeries, 1 shoulder surgery, and is the biggest Tim Hortons ice cap enthusiast you will ever meet. So we are very happy to have you both, and I'll pass it over to you to begin your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Lucy. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Okay, thank you all so much for having us today. We're really excited to be talking to all of you about the For Young Drivers by Young Drivers framework by Parachute. So really quickly, we've developed this framework to provide road safety stakeholders, including injury prevention practitioners, with strategies and tools for engaging Canadian youth aged 15 to 24 years old. And through implementing this framework, we're really hoping to make a positive impact on young people's driving behavior, attitudes, and knowledge, as well as help develop the next generation of road safety advocates. And I also want to take a moment to thank our funders, Transport Canada and Desjardins Insurance. So we already did a bit of an introduction. So I'm Umi Umi. I'm a manager of knowledge translation programs. Previously, I was a project lead for the For Young Drivers by Young Drivers initiative and the author of the framework tools and report. I have a background in public health with a focus on health promotion, and I've been in the youth engagement and knowledge mobilization space for over 5 years now. I'll turn it over to Kiana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kiana. Lucy did an awesome job at introducing me. A few other things. So yeah, she mentioned I grew up playing a lot of sports and that kind of thing. I had a lot of injuries and just unfortunate surgeries from that. But through that kind of developed my passion for cars. And so I decided to, get into the car scene a little bit in Red Deer. We have a lot of car meets and that kind of thing. So I started going to those. I drive a standard now and just I really like the road safety realm. So that kind of inspired me to join Umi's project. And yeah, I really just want to further my education and get more involved in road safety. And then another kind of fun fact about me, I'm working towards my certified personal trainer this summer as well. So yeah, pass it back to Umi here.
Awesome. Thank you, Kiana. So a little bit about Parachute. I'm sure most of you already know who we are, so I'll keep it very short. We are Canada's national charity dedicated to injury prevention. We educate and advocate for injury prevention in 3 key areas where people are unintentionally injured in the home, at play, and on the move. And if you'd like to learn more, please visit us at parachute.ca. So I'm going to quickly provide an overview of the For Young Drivers by Young Drivers project before talking about the framework and tools. So a little bit about how the idea came to be, why it's important, and the methods we use to develop the framework and tools. So starting off with some context about youth road safety in Canada. So road crashes are the 3rd leading cause of death among young people in Canada. young people who we define in our project as those 15 to 24 years old are killed in crashes at a higher rate than any other age group under 75 years old. And even though young people only make up 13% of licensed drivers, they account for 25% of all road-related injuries and fatalities. So I'm sure many of you are aware that the youth population can be pretty tricky to target for the purposes of awareness, education, and advocacy. And this is for a number of reasons. So one reason is that they are highly influenced by their peer groups, but they still look to their parents as role models. Their cognitive, physical, and social skills are still developing. And then with the recent legalization of cannabis, as well as the widespread influence of social media, we're kind of seeing both contributing to risky driving behavior among young drivers. So youth engagement does lead to more effective programming and healthier youth, and they are more likely to adopt health promotion and injury prevention strategies when they are involved in the knowledge generation than when adults solely develop these strategies. So taking all of this together, the For Young Drivers by Young Drivers project recognized the need for new innovative strategies to reach and engage youth and effectively address the issue of road safety, road injuries and fatalities. So this is kind of just an overview of the purpose of the project and what we hope to accomplish. So one is the understanding the facilitators, barriers, attitudes, and perceptions that affect safe driving behavior in young drivers. The second one is identifying new opportunities and channels for increasing youth awareness of road safety issues with a specific focus on technology and communications solutions. And the third is to build a framework and tools that will guide engagement of young drivers and their passengers in our road safety initiatives in the next 3 to 5 years, including our flagship youth road safety program, National Teen Driver Safety Week. So a little bit about our approach for the project. We started with a thorough literature review and environmental scan to better understand factors that impact driving behavior in young people. What are some effective youth engagement and partnership strategies and tools and platforms that are already being used in health promotion and injury prevention programs? And this literature review and environmental scan is available on our website in both English and French. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And then we also used the review to inform our data collection tools and processes where we engaged almost 300 young people aged 15 to 24 years old across Canada and a dozen experts in road safety and youth engagement. And we did this through focus groups, peer-to-peer interviews, and a national survey. And then we took all the qualitative data, did a thematic analysis to determine key themes to create the framework and the tools. So all of our activities in this project couldn't have been done without the Canadian Youth Road Safety Council. This is our amazing youth advisory committee of 20 youth aged 15 to 24 years old from across 7 provinces. And I'm going to turn it over to Kiana to tell us a little bit about her experiences on the council and a little bit about how the council was instrumental in creating the framework and tools.
For sure. All right. Thanks, Umi. So our council met monthly. We would do, it was a pretty big group of us, but I think we were super effective in all of us being able to, share opinions. We're all from kind of the far reaches of Canada. So like, for example, some of our council members having only driven in rural areas where a lot of us, being in big urban cities and that sort of thing. So that was really interesting to kind of hear different barriers that we had for whether it was public transportation or even just our own driving and road safety. Our biggest thing was youth engagement. So we wanted to touch on whether youth like social media to learn about like public health, or different advertisements, whether that was like through MAD or different things like that. We really wanted, the main goal of our council was to be to have youth at the forefront of making decisions to help with future road safety. So we called it For Young Drivers by Young Drivers, and I think that was like very powerful for us. We created some data collection tools. We did some surveys. We also recruited a lot of experts in the road safety field and interviewed them and just kind of got their opinions on road safety. So one of the people I interviewed was a driver safety instructor from Red Deer. And I think we also had some RCMP involved in that as well. For our biggest, I guess, contribution was the Parachutes National Teen Driver Safety Week campaign. So that's something that we're really pushing for this upcoming year, and that will be in October. And just trying to get youth more aware of driver safety and see what barriers that we're still experiencing there. Honestly, while being part of this council, I learned there are a lot of barriers that I didn't even experience myself. Like I said, being all over Canada, there was a lot of things I learned. It was honestly amazing to hear everybody's opinions. And we, like I said, we kind of first focused on driving and then realized there's a lot of barriers even in the infrastructure of our cities that aren't allowing for public transportation. So we kind of kept that in mind as well throughout the year. And then, yeah, social media was a huge thing for us trying to learn and navigate how we can advertise more for safety throughout our social media, and if that's something that youth would really grasp onto. But yeah, learned a lot about driver safety policies across Canada, public transportation policies as well. And yeah, I think we really did an amazing job at just connecting youth and learning about the safety of our youth across Canada.
Awesome. Thank you, Kiana, for your overview of your experience. I like to reiterate the value of having youth at the table to, co-develop and co-plan, co-everything with you when you're developing and implementing your programs, as we can see from the work that the council did. Okay, so, there we go. So I'm going to talk about the framework now. So the framework is set within the context of road safety, but a lot of the strategies and recommendations in the framework are very much applicable to youth engagement in other areas of injury prevention and health promotion. But in terms of this framework, there's a few purposes of it for it. One is to help road safety stakeholders understand what meaningful youth engagement is, improve stakeholders' understanding of technology and communication-based solutions for reaching young drivers and passengers, and then also helps road safety stakeholders implement effective strategies and practices to support youth engagement in their road safety programming and initiative. So the framework is made up of 3 guiding principles, which you can see in the middle, as well as 5 areas of focus, each with their own set of recommendations. And I just wanted to emphasize that the areas of focus are not necessarily distinct categories. A lot of them do overlap with each other and feed into each other, but they are just visually depicted as distinct categories to ensure that we are holistically engaging young people in road safety programs and to provide organizations with choice in terms of what area of focus best aligns with their context. Oh, okay, so I'm going to start off explaining the guiding principles. So the middle, as you can see, it's in the middle part of the framework. And these are principles that should be applied to and drive all aspects of your work. So the first one is meaningful youth engagement, with the key word being meaningful. So what does that mean? It just means going to where the youth are, treating them as expert decision makers, providing a variety of engagement options for them, and also using youth-friendly language, interests, and trends. The next guiding principle is equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. So this means not just having the needs of diverse populations in the back of your mind when planning, implementing, and evaluating road safety programming, but also actively creating and implementing activities that provide access and opportunities to all youth populations and actually addressing their needs in the context of road safety. And our last guiding principle is harm reduction. So young people are going to be using alcohol and drugs. So as road safety experts, it's important to create programming that mitigate the risks of being on the road after using alcohol and drugs without necessarily aiming to reduce alcohol and drug use itself. What we found is that young people are not receptive to an abstinence-only model. And so victim blaming or shaming them for their drug or alcohol use, you're going to lose them if this is the approach that you take. So I'm going to move on to the areas of focus, as well as the recommendations for each. So the first one is youth partnership. So what is the difference between youth engagement and youth partnership? So how I like to frame it is that youth engagement is a spectrum, and youth partnership is, it can be considered to be on the deeper end of the spectrum. So it requires investment of resources, it's long-term, it's sustainable. Youth are integrated into program planning, implementation, and evaluation, and they are making decisions. So I've outlined here 4 recommendations for how you can build effective youth partnerships. So the first one is integrating youth partnership into your organization's strategic plan. So this can ensure that youth engagement and partnership is not an afterthought and resources are allocated to it to sustain it in the long term. The second one is to establish youth advisory committees to co-create and co-lead road safety initiatives. So this can be kind of daunting, engaging youth and having regular communication with them, but it is incredibly valuable. And one of the tools that we created provides a step-by-step guide on how you can establish your own youth advisory committee. And then the third recommendation is working with a network of youth ambassadors. So youth ambassador programs train, mentor, and support youth to work within their communities to raise awareness and educate about road safety. And these are already happening at the local level through a variety of organizations, and they have all indicated how valuable it is. Some examples of how ambassadors can spread the word about road safety includes creating a youth-led YouTube or podcast channel to post content, facilitating peer-to-peer communication, promote and share road safety resources as well as their personal experiences on their social media accounts, as well as running in-person programming like assemblies and workshops in schools or community centers. And then our last recommendation is engage youth in evaluating road safety messages and programs. So this is a really good way to help young people build some important skills, while also making sure that your evaluation plan is relevant to youth and is capturing the data that is needed to help make improvements in your program. Our second area of focus is looking at youth communication. So what are some effective communication strategies when you are communicating directly with youth, whether that's through traditional, digital, or social media? So our first recommendation is co-design and test drive messaging with representative youth. So as Kiana mentioned, we did this with our National Teen Driver Safety Week last year, and that was the first time we did it with such a big group of youth from across Canada. And they pointed out things that we never would have thought of, and we really got a sense of what resonated with them. Our second recommendation is staying up to date on youth social and digital media preferences and practices. So their preferences and frequency of social media use, their preferences of who they receive health and road safety information from, and the formats that they prefer to receive information is constantly changing. So right now, what we have found is that young people prefer social media platforms that give them the most autonomy. So Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok are pretty popular, but this can change within a short period of time. So directly asking them what their preferences are would be the best way to ensure that you are reaching diverse youth through with your road safety messaging. Our third recommendation is using social marketing strategies that resonate with youth. So it's important to understand your youth audience to determine accurately and adequately what is likely to hold their attention. So you want to avoid incorporating things that young people might consider cringe, and rather focus on creating messaging that instills reflection in them. So some things that we have found that work well with young people include humor, as well as youth trends that are well done. They like clear messages that require minimal effort to understand. They like relatable content, which they are more likely to share with others. And then anything that's catchy, whether that's music or slogans. And our last recommendation for this area of focus is using storytelling to instill empathy and change youth attitudes. So this was actually one of the biggest recurring themes that we saw, and that's youth are incredibly receptive to real life stories of those who have been impacted by the negative consequences of road crashes. So stories would enable them to reflect upon how the dangers of unsafe driving connect to them and others in their lives. And these stories can depict the consequences of unsafe driving behavior, such as injuries, disabilities, the psychological toll, as well as negative financial outcomes. Moving on to our third area of focus, which is youth outreach. So this area looks to see which groups influence youth and how to reach youth through these groups. So from our project, what we saw is that peers, parents, schools and educators, as well as experts, all influence road safety behavior in youth. So these recommendations target these groups. The first one is to prioritize peer-to-peer communication. Again, this was also another big theme that we saw, is that young people are influenced and receptive to their peers. So peer-to-peer communication and education can be an effective way for behavior change. However, not all peers are equal. So peers that are likely to get through to youth include slightly older youth, youth who are the gatekeepers of the social status within their school or community, as well as near peers. So these are peers who are not in the same life stage, but they're close enough and they also have some kind of expertise that commands respect. So for example, medical or nursing students. The next recommendation is to train parents to provide accurate and timely road safety information. So parents are also one of the biggest influencers on driving behavior on youth in terms of modeling behavior and imparting knowledge. And what we're hearing is that the information that parents pass on may not be the most accurate or might be out of date, and this can have a negative impact for generations to come. So potentially providing training to parents on communicating proper road safety information, how to have conversations about safe driving, and even improving their own driving skills can positively impact young people's driving behavior. Our next recommendation is using schools and educators as delivery mechanisms. So school-based programming, including through driving schools, can be effective in reaching a large audience of youth. And educators themselves can also have a role in shaping young people's attitudes and beliefs about safe driving. And then our fourth recommendation is collaborating with experts and credible organizations such as yourselves. So young people do place great value on information that come from reputable expert sources, and leveraging this trust can go a long way to getting accurate information to them. So in our survey, I think experts and credible organizations were the second highest ranked source of information that they get driving information from. So having credible organizations co-create resources with youth can ensure relevant and engaging information is reaching them. And then our last recommendation is rethinking the use of social media influencers. So young people have really developed a healthy sense of skepticism when it comes to social media influencers, especially if they deliver health and safety messaging that is not their usual content. So we recommend finding influencers who are already interested in road safety or who have already touched on road safety in their content in a fun but safe way, or have them collaborate with experts to add some legitimacy to their content. And then our last area of focus, our second last area of focus is youth capacity building. So this is looking to see, what knowledge and skill gaps are among youth when it comes to driving and road safety behavior, as well as strategies to address these gaps through education and training. So the first recommendation is conducting a needs assessment to understand what young people need to become better drivers. So this can help you determine gaps in their knowledge and skills, as well as understand their perspectives on road safety. As young people, as we have found through our project, they're very in tune to gaps in their knowledge and skills, as well as what road safety improvements are needed in their communities. Our second recommendation is increasing and reinforcing road safety knowledge and skills through a variety of mediums. So young people have differing preferences, abilities, comfort levels. And so having a variety of ways to do this, whether that's through traditional media, social media, videos, art, music, etc., is likely to reach more young people. And from our survey, we found that videos, infographics, and in-person presentations are the most popular formats for receiving road safety information. Our third recommendation is provide in-person and virtual opportunities to practice skills that promote safe driving. So in addition to having robust driver education programs, things like telemetric apps, virtual reality, and hands-on driving skill programs can reinforce driving knowledge and skills. And our last recommendation for this area of focus is incentivizing youth to care about road safety and engage in safe driving behavior. So these are strategies that target young people's wallets, either by gaining or losing money, and that can incentivize them to drive safely. So examples of this can look like educating young people on the financial costs of getting into a crash, lower insurance premiums, and receiving extra credit for completing road safety related workshops or webinars. And then finally, our last area of focus, which is youth advocacy. So this looks at how youth can be engaged in making decisions regarding built environment, systems, services, and policies to create systemic changes, as well as the strategies that you can use to do this. So the first recommendation is understand what areas of road safety are important to youth. So like I mentioned before, they are really in tune to the changes that are needed in their communities to make roads safer for themselves and others. So having a personal connection to the road safety issues that are important to them, or connecting road safety to social issues that they care about, such as climate change, social inequality, substance use, and mental health, can be ways to get youth to care about road safety and become advocates. The second recommendation is developing youth advocacy toolkits and training opportunities for engaging decision makers. So what we're hearing is that, reaching decision makers is something that young people would like to do, but they either don't know how to do it or they find it to be intimidating. So providing them with training and guidance to build their capacity can empower them to carry out their own independent projects as well as advocacy activities. Examples of advocacy-related training can include project management, how to approach funders, networking skills, as well as how to engage in interdisciplinary and intergenerational collaborations. And our last recommendation is advocate to have youth in formal decision-making spaces. So whether that's at internal meetings, with stakeholders, with funders, having them present and empowered to make decisions can go a long way in creating the next generation of road safety advocates. So that's an overview of the framework. It was a bit long, but we hope that there were some recommendations that you could apply within your context. So in addition to the framework, we've also created a few tools to help our partners implement the framework and the recommendations to their context. And I'm going to quickly go through all of them. I'm going to stop sharing for a bit. Just going to switch my screen here. So all of our tools, all the framework tools are located on the Parachute website. As you can see, we have our framework report, and then we have 3 tools. One is an interactive summary. So pretty much it's just a very high-level overview of the framework. You can click on each part and it'll take you to that page. So if you click on the middle, you go to the next page, which is guiding principles. If you click on, for example, youth capacity building, you can go to the youth capacity building page. It's a little bit interactive, and each page just kind of provides a definition of the area of focus or the guiding principle, as well as the recommendations. And then our second tool is our establishing your own youth advisory committee. So this is just a tip sheet with an overview of how you can form your own youth advisory committee. Obviously, it's going to look different from context to context, but these are just some things that you can be mindful of when, if you ever plan on doing or creating your own committee. And then our last tool is the framework implementation tool. Let me just go back up. So this is, I'm going to take some time to go through this one. So pretty much this tool is to help you determine, what are the areas of strengths and gaps that currently exist in your programming when it comes to engaging youth. And then also to help you with some program planning and decision making when it comes to incorporating youth partnership into your programming. So you can either apply this tool to your entire organization, a specific program, or project of a specific team. So I'm just going to go through it. So as you can see, you have each of the guiding principles, as well as areas of focus and the recommendations for each area of focus. And beside that, you have examples in practice. So these examples are not comprehensive, but just to give users an idea of what each guiding principle and area of focus recommendation can look like in practice. So I'll just quickly go through an example. So let's just do youth outreach. So you have each recommendation, you have each examples in practice, and then you have a scale. So you have a scale from 1 to 4. If you scroll back up, you have the description for the scale. So 1 is the recommendation is not applied within your context at all. The 4th one, or 4 is it's thoroughly applied within your context. And then we also have a NA, or not applicable, because we do recognize that not every area of focus and recommendation will be relevant to everyone, and you might not even have a desire to implement them in the future either. So going back to youth outreach, you can give yourself a score for each one. Let's say NA for this one, for example, and you can come up with an overall rating. where you just add up the score and you divide it by the number of applicable recommendations. So because one recommendation is not applicable to us, we divide it by 4 out of the 5 recommendations. And then you give yourself an average for this area of focus. And then, of course, we have our comment box here where you can type out anything that's relevant to each recommendation. So that's a bit of an overview. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint of the tools that are available to help you implement the framework. I'm going to turn it over to Kiana after I go back to the right slide to tell us a little bit about future potential tools that we'll be developing to help you implement the framework.
For sure. So yeah, we do have a few ideas for tools that we'd like to implement in the future. Mostly just for, ease of navigating road safety, just so anybody can implement it in whatever context they're looking at. So our first idea would be an infographic. I know we mentioned in the survey that we put out to youth for National Teen Driver Safety Week that youth said that infographics were one of their main ways of actually getting road safety information and public health information. So we would love to develop, an easy to look at infographic for youth and also for shareholders or anyone else to use to look at our areas of focus and guiding principles and be able to apply them. Another thing that we'd like to do is implement training programs as well. It's easy to look at an infographic or a toolkit and be like, oh yeah, I can definitely, use this, but actually having the proper training to implement it properly would go a long way for our youth and helping youth to feel safer on the roads and in public transit as well. We also wanted to implement a youth engagement guide mainly for stakeholders. It'll be more of a visually friendly version and less big words and that kind of thing. And so that'll have, specific examples of how the tools and framework can actually be applied to your context as well. And yeah, that's kind of what we're thinking for the future. But if you have any other tools that you'd like to see added or things that you think would be really helpful for us, please let us know. We'd love to hear them.
Awesome. Thank you, Kiana. So next, I wanted to take a little bit of time to go over how we are applying the framework to Parachute's Youth Road Safety Program. So essentially, I created a list of 23 recommendations based off of the framework specifically for Parachute. And these recommendations were around our flagship youth programming, which is National Teen Driver Safety Week. So the recommendations were around the planning, the activities, but also thinking about long-term impact. So there are also recommendations around sustaining youth partnership, promoting youth advocacy, and building stakeholder relationships. So to give you an idea of the changes that Parachute is planning to implement, I wanted to provide a quick overview of what we did for National Teen Driver Safety Week in previous years. So some of you might be aware of National Teen Driver Safety Week, or NTDSW. It's an awareness week designed to build public awareness of teen driver safety issues and encourage young people to spearhead solutions that will improve road safety for all. So previously, NTDSW consisted of creating toolkits that would be available to community groups, teens, and parents who can then organize virtual and in-person activities to educate teens on distracted, drunk, drug-impaired, and aggressive driving, as well as rail safety and the dangers of speeding. So the toolkit included key messages, social media activity guide, as well as promotional items. And then we also provided schools and communities with materials and an event guide to run positive ticketing campaigns, which encouraged and rewarded safe driving behavior and habits among teen drivers. And then in addition to these activities, we also ran social media campaigns targeting specific driving behaviors. For example, last year was distracted driving. And then we had a social media guide available for partners to also amplify the messaging to their audiences. And then finally, we also partnered with an English and French influencer to deliver road safety messaging on social media. So this year, we're changing the approach to better emphasize that road safety requires a holistic approach rather than road safety issues being a result of individual behavior problems. So this year's theme, which is Youth as Changemakers, reflects our commitment to support young people's role in improving road safety and prioritizes youth engagement, co-creation, and advocacy. So we have 4 main activities. listed here. So the first one is the continued engagement of the Canadian Youth Road Safety Council. We do have a smaller council this term, but they will be involved in all aspects of planning, implementation, and evaluation of NTDSW. The second one is new. It's Parachute's Youth Road Safety Grant Program. The name is still TBD, but this granting program would fund local youth-initiated, youth-led awareness and advocacy campaigns that addresses road safety issues such as speeding, whether that's behavior laws or enforcement, alcohol or drug-impaired driving, distracted driving, pedestrian, bicycle, and wheeled safety, road design, accessibility and mobility, and safe, sustainable cities and climate change. And then in addition to the funding, Parachute will provide grant winners with training on best practices in communication and outreach through an activity guide, virtual orientation, and webinars. The third activity for NTDSW this year would be to share the For Young Drivers by Young Drivers framework, tools, and key messaging with our road safety partners. So we are hoping to increase knowledge exchange activities around youth engagement in road safety and to improve stakeholder capacity. And this will include the creation of the tools that Kiana had mentioned previously. And then finally, we'll be doing our usual robust social media and digital media campaign, as we have found that it does work, has worked in previous years. And then I'm going to turn it over to Kiana, who will tell us about the changes we want to see in 2024 and beyond, and a little bit about what she wants to see as a young person herself.
Yeah, so as Umi mentioned, we're continuing our Road Safety Council. So I think we're all super excited about it, and just having this year of experience and having this new framework that we created, I think we'll be able to make a lot more changes. The biggest thing that we want to start with is changing our name. This even applies to myself now that I'm 20. I'm not a teen anymore, but calling it, like National Teen Driver Safety Week or the Youth Road Safety Council, we want to revamp the name a little bit, and even moving away from the term road safety. Our next point is we want to prioritize safe mobility as well. So this term, it'll just be more inclusive, and we're all trying to be more inclusive and more accessible, and with equity, diversion, and inclusivity being one of our main points as well. We really want to drive that home. We want to target all road users as well. So whether youth are actually driving or the passengers in their cars, we want them to feel safe. We want, our cyclists to feel safe on the roads, those using public transportation, all of that. We really want to make sure that, youth feel empowered and safe through their safe mobility daily. We actually just in our first meeting with the new council, one of the things we really talked about was prioritizing youth that we may not be reaching yet. So there are lots of subgroups of youth in Canada that may not be receiving access to road safety programming. So whether that be international students that are new to Canada, Indigenous youth, rural youth, our main goal is to try and reach them and make sure that we're including them in all of our frameworks and our considerations for safe mobility. We also want to hopefully recruit these youth and have them, be part of co-leading and co-creating our programming and messaging as well. I think just even having youth at the forefront of creating this framework in the first place is amazing. But if we can target these youth that we aren't quite reaching, that would really help to benefit our programming even more. I think that's kind of all for what we're looking to change for the future. And then for myself, a lot of the barriers that I've noticed in my age group, even just with students in university, a lot of us we're a little bit naive to how a car works and what's under the hood of our cars and things like that. So whether it's a dead battery, we can't get our car going, things like that would just really help us to be safe on the roads, or if we're driving, our check engine light comes up, what to do in situations like that. So I think we want to be able to provide more education to youth that way. We talked a lot about bringing safe mobility education into our schools as well. I know when I was in high school in 10th grade, we have a local man named Parker Thompson, and he's a professional race car driver. So he came in to my high school and spoke about safe mobility and his experiences with driving and that kind of thing. And that was really empowering. So we'd love to do more advocacy that way and get education into schools and just make it more accessible to all youth. So yeah, I think that's definitely what I'd like to see. I'd also be very interested to do more research on more barriers that youth are experiencing. So I think, putting out more surveys, reaching those populations of youth across Canada that we're not reaching, that would be amazing. Like we said, we learned a lot in our first surveys that we put out, things that we hadn't even brought up in our council. So that'd be really awesome to learn more about there. And yeah, I think for myself, I know like driving and road safety is really an incredible privilege. And we really want to empower youth as much as possible to make them confident drivers, and have them, or make them have, or feel that they have positive attitudes, even being passengers in cars or cyclists or just anywhere where they're involved in mobility in their cities. And yeah, we really just want to encourage those safe driving behaviors. So yeah, pass it on to Umi.
Awesome. Thank you, Kiana. That was super insightful. And we are going to wrap it up. That's it. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions or would like to connect, our contact information is here. And I believe the presentation will be sent out later. I just want to remind everyone that the framework and tools can be accessed in both English and French on our website. And I will drop the link in the chat after I shut down this presentation. But thank you all so much for listening. And I guess we will open it up for questions now.
Thank you